Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on a few files, the first of which will be the Egyptian Parliament holding its third session amid economic and political stability. Now, the economic stability regarding the IMF report that was released, really boosting the morale of the Egyptian economy, stating that the economic reform program has started off in Egypt. It actually started off strongly, to a good start. Also, not just the IMF report, but also the Global Competitiveness Report that really enhanced the position of Egypt. Now, this is the first part of tonight's episode. Also, we're going to be talking about the reconciliation talks between the two Palestinian divisions. Now, this is a result of the Egyptian mediation between Fatah and Hamas, and also a very important step towards the peace talks and the negotiations with the Israeli side. Today, the Egyptian delegation was in Gaza to attend the reunification and reconciliation talks between both Palestinian factions. But before we do that, let's check out this report regarding the IMF report hailing the Egyptian economic reform program, and we'll be right back with our distinguished guest.
The International Monetary Fund published its report for the first review of Egypt's economic reform program, which aims at restoring the economic stability and paving the way for a higher long-term growth, saying the reform program was off to a good start. In its report, the IMF expressed satisfaction over the government's bold economic reforms as it prepares to release the third tranche of the $12 billion loan to the country. The IMF said that the country had made a good start to its IMF-backed reform program, despite seeking waivers for missing some targets in June and a deeper-than-expected currency depreciation, but inflation remains the main risk for stability. With regard to macroeconomic forecasts, the IMF said that they had recently improved the inclusion of a larger-than-expected consumption impact. According to the IMF report, market confidence is returning and capital flows are increasing. These augur well for the future growth. It noted that the authorities' immediate priority is to reduce inflation, which poses a risk of macroeconomic stability. It said that it had agreed to a request for a waiver after Egypt missed primary fiscal balance and fuel subsidy bill requirements for end June. The waiver has granted in part because of planned strong fiscal adjustments in the next 2 years. It entrenched high and persistent inflation, which could pose a threat to the macroeconomic stability. It may also impede credibility of the new monetary policy framework. The IMF said that the country current account deficit was seen narrowing to 4.6% of GDP in 2017-2018 fiscal year and to 3.8% in 2018-2019. It said it primarily noting that the Central Bank of Egypt has adopted a more stringent fiscal policy in an effort to contain inflation. The launching of the reform program, said the IMF, is a shift from old policies which had led to significant imbalances. The head of the IMF mission for the country commended Egypt for the measures which the fund is evaluating along with their effect as part of the 3-year program. He said the measures had been taken by authorities were bold, adding that the world body agreed that they were necessary to reverse the building of the imbalances that were hindering higher growth and job creation.
تقدم مصر شهداء للحفاظ على أرضها. كل يوم بيسقط من الجيش ومن الشرطة، شهداء كي تحيا مصر. حلفي بعون الله طول ما احنا فينا الروح، يا بلدنا في لبنان ومعانا فين ما نروح.
فابني مش خسارة فيكم، مش خسارة في مصر.
طول ما احنا فينا الروح، يا بلدنا في لبنان ومعانا فين ما نروح.
كنت بتمنى يكون عمره أطول ويفادي مصر أكتر. أنا ببكي بكاء انفراق.
اللي راسك فوق زي السماء عالية. كان لازم أقبل رأس أم الشهيد وأقبل يد أم الشهيد بالنيابة عنكم كلكم. قدمت أغلى ما عندها. يا بلادي يا بلادي تعالينا يا بلادي نفديك يا بلادي وتعيش يا بلادي. مفيش حد يقدر يهزم أمة بتتعامل بقيم أخلاقية شريفة في وقت عز فيه الشر. يا بلادي بالعزم والإصرار لنا رب ينصرنا.
ابني فخر ليكم وانتوا كلكم فخر لمصر.
طول ما احنا فينا الروح، يا بلدنا في لبنان ومعانا فين ما نروح.
تحيا مصر.
إن رسالة الإسلام قد أرسل قواعد التعايش السلمي بين مختلف الأديان والأعراق.
هذا الدين مرتبط بالأديان السماوية برباط عضوي لا ينفصل.
الإنسان الشرقي بطبيعته متدين، يحب الدين لأنه يعمق الصلة الشخصية بينه وبين الله.
في الوجود اللي احنا فيه كله مش لوحدينا ومش ممكن هنبقى لوحدينا.
إن مشيئة الله قضت أن يخلق الناس مختلفين حتى في بصمات أصابعهم. يقول القرآن: ولو شاء ربك لجعل الناس أمة واحدة ولا يزالون مختلفين. وحرية العقيدة مكفولة في القرآن بنص صريح.
واحنا أوصياء على عقول بعض، على اختيارات بعض، في الدين بالذات لا بقى.
لا إكراه في الدين، لا إكراه في الدين.
حرية الإنسان وحرية الإيمان والاعتقاد تقف عند حدود حريات الآخرين.
المسلم الذي يؤذي أهل الكتاب تبرأ الله ورسوله منه في الدنيا والآخرة.
يا ترى في مدارسنا وفي معاهدنا وفي كلياتنا بنعلم احترام الآخر؟
لا يمكن أن يكون ثم سلام بين الشعوب ما دام لا يكون ثم سلام بين الأديان.
نحن رجال الدين علينا مسؤولية كبيرة.
كل واحد فينا هيتحاسب لوحده وهيتسأل لوحده.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and before we start our dialogue tonight, let me welcome our very distinguished guest, Engineer Samir Riad, member of the Egyptian Industrial Federation and the economic expert. We're also joined by Dr. Ihab Al-Kharrad, the vice chairman of the Egyptian Social Democratic Party. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Engineer Riad, first of all, let's take a look at the IMF report. It is preparing to release the third tranche of its $12 billion to Egypt. It hailed the economic reform program that Egypt has embarked on, really highlighting the austerity measures that the country has taken, the lifting of subsidies, the value-added tax, including women and youth in the labor sector. How would you evaluate this report coming from the IMF, and how important is it not just for the Egyptian government but also for the other financial institutions and the foreign investors looking at Egypt for a potential soil?
Definitely the confidence which the economic institutes which give it to the Egyptian economy, this is a boost for our image and economy, and I believe I trust that we are improving, and that is a proof that we are improving economically, and hopefully that we will be able to depend on ourselves, not on anybody else. This is our aim, all of us. But if this is going to be given to us as a sort, this is a confidence in the Egyptian economy, which I believe it is. We need it.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Kharat, now the Egyptian parliament is holding its third session now. It was inaugurated actually yesterday by Prime Minister Sharif Ismail, and they were really talking about the new legislations that need to take place, a main focus on the economic file. How would you evaluate the previous two sessions, and what would you expect from the third one?
Well, our party has, along many other critiques of the investment law, for example, has been raising a flag for a long time that these laws need to change. For example, exempting investors from taxation does not help investment in Egypt, because most of the industrial countries that have investments will tax people. If they are not taxed in Egypt, they will be taxed back there. So they rather be more fairly treated or more mildly treated in terms of taxation, rather than come back and face their own taxation. So this was not the helpful thing. What we need to do is, in order to boost the economy, is to increase our anti-corruption measures, our transparency measures, the long-term industrial plans and the short-term industrial plans, as well as other areas of investment. But I am reminded by industry because of your distinguished guest and my friend over here. So this is what we need. So the amount of laws that have been passed by this parliament in its last session was tremendous. However, I would say that it was these laws were largely ill discussed. Very scarce conversation has been done. The members of the parliament themselves did not know about most of these laws except on a very short period, rather than members of the public and experts from different sectors of this people, so the Egyptian people. So what I would call for is that enough time is given to discuss. As the laws are drafted, the dialogue of different stakeholders in society should be opened, including political parties, including expertise, including people of the different interest groups themselves. Example, industry experts, tourism experts, education experts, before the laws are given. Of course, one exemption, a prominent exemption of this last year, was the health reform, which was really open to a wide and long enough discussion.
Yes.
Educational reform, industrial reform, tourism reform are still held back. So this is what we need for, let alone the transitional justice laws, which we have been calling for a long time, and the Constitution actually has been calling for, and it was not realized at all. And other laws that the Constitution called for, including the anti-discrimination agency and other constitutional demands.
Definitely. Well, Engineer Riad, as a member of the Egyptian Industrial Federation, do you feel that some of the amendments made to the investment law, and the investment law has been a very big issue over the past few years, do you feel that these amendments are sufficient actually to attract foreign investors, if not exempting them from taxes here, as Dr. Kharat mentioned? Well, maybe they would rather be dealing with the taxes here than in their own countries, probably would be cheaper. But there was also the issue of the bureaucracy and the corruption, and actually walking into the market, not being to get out of it if they wish. Do you feel that enough amendments have been made for the investment law? And if not, what do we still need to fix in this law?
We need to fix the implementation of every law. And how it is going to be executed, and who is going to execute it. And we have to go into details of this. I believe we are neglecting this point, and we need to go through it, you know, and to simplify the laws, to enable everybody to be able to implement it. And I believe this is one of the weakest points, which we spend a lot of time in arguing about laws and talking about laws, but we neglect the ways and means of implementation of the law, and who is implementing it. And this is a very important issue, which I always wonder that we spend so much time arguing about laws, and then when the implementation takes place, it is unsatisfactory.
Yes. Well, we see a lot of governmental and presidential visits going to different countries all over the world, different continents, meeting a lot of business delegations from different countries, telling them about the Egyptian market, trying to attract the foreign investors here. How dependent are we on these governmental visits? Can't we just attract the Egyptian market on its own without any presidential or governmental visits? Can't we just attract foreign investors directly?
Well, what about the Egyptian investors? We have to attract them first.
Yes.
We have to see about them, and we have to see about our banking system and the money which it is, can be used, and the individual, and the whole thing has to be seen about it that, that we can depend on ourselves. But always foreign investment is very important. But the local investment is needed to be seen about it, and it has to be in place, and has to be deployed to enable us to proceed and to, and to have a quick results.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Kharat, as you've mentioned now, maybe there was not enough time for members of the parliament to review a lot of the economic laws and all laws at that. Do you feel now that there is a better chance for the MPs and a better time to pick and choose members of the different committees within the parliament, choose who heads all these committees? Do they have a better background now? Are they better equipped after 2 previous sessions to make the right calls, to amend the right laws in the right manner?
Yeah, I would say so, if there is a political will and if there is some sort of political readiness and awareness and commitment from the side of the parliament. They should have a good chance now after 2 years of experience, and after passing through the bottleneck of the hundreds of laws passed on during the interim period. And if they will ever be prepared, this is the time for them to be prepared. If they will not be ready at this time, then they would be letting down the Egyptian people who voted for them.
Well, what do you think is we've been talking about the economic reform program, we've been talking about all the economic amendments that we need to do, but you've also pointed out to the different sectors such as the health sector, also the educational sector. A lot of talk about really using the expertise and the cooperation with the Japanese experience in education. How far do you think the parliament has been successful in trying to reform these other sectors?
I think this was an area of real shortcoming from the parliament. The effort done within the parliament in reforming these sectors and in actually building up what we call an institutional reform in different institutions of the government, as your distinguished guest, Dr. Engineer Samir, has pointed out, the ability to implement any law is highly doubted by everybody, because the bureaucracy is so huge and so dysfunctional, as well as corruption, as well as the pressure on the justice system, and investors, for example, as well as educators, as well as health officers and health officials are not feeling reassured with the efficiency of the justice system and with the efficiency of all the governmental institutions. So it is not only an area of reform, but it is an area of legislative reform, but of institutional reform too, whereas the legislative piece of the puzzle is a very important piece, but other pieces must be there too, as for example, you cannot achieve real reformation without true governance, transparency in governance, and you cannot achieve transparency in governance without local authorities. For example, the local councils have been put on hold for 6 years now or more. We don't have local councils. We don't have free workers' unions. We don't have a voice for the workers. Most of the strikes that are taking place now with the workers are strikes that are demanding that their factories work, put to work, that investment is put in the public sector factories and as well as the public sector's factories. So we have this situation that the workers are going to strike, asking, put us to work. We don't have enough work. This is what. So they go to work and they don't have enough at their hands. So that's why they are striking. So all this is one matrix, is one set. Everything is impacting the other factors. You need good governance. You need true democracy. You need social democracy from the roots up in terms of local councils, trade unions. You need transparency within the police department. You need to retrain and re-empower the judiciary and the prosecutor system. All of these need to be modernized. They need to be invigorated. And on the base of all this, you have educational reform, the ability to unleash the creativity of the Egyptian people. The Egyptian people, the Egyptian labor now is in limbo. We don't have enough trained workers, and when we have trained workers, they cannot compete with the international market. So we need to invigorate this. 60% of the economy is within the informal sector. So we cannot keep on turning a blind eye on this one. Like, the tuk-tuks are everywhere. 2 million, some people say 1 million, some others say 4 million. They are not registered up till now. For 7, 8 years, the phenomenon is there, and you don't know what's happening. So this is not reassuring. The whole environment should be looked at by the parliament rather than focusing on the belly dancers are not decent enough or the gays are raising the rainbow. These are not the issues now. We are dealing with poverty, we are dealing with people dying from the lack of health system, we are dealing with unemployment. What are you talking about?
Yes. Well, Engineer Riad, it's not just the IMF report that came out praising the Egyptian economic reform program. Also, the Global Competitiveness report actually moved Egypt 15 places from 115 to 100, the 100th position in terms of competitiveness. Now, putting the foreign investment and attracting foreign investors aside, you pointed out to the domestic investors, the Egyptian investors, being member of the Egyptian Industrial Federation. We hear about a lot of problems with the labor. The factories are still not producing to their full capacity. Now, with all these reports praising what's going on, and these are all great headlines, with the Egyptian Central Bank saying that we have higher now foreign reserves of foreign currency. How would you explain that still our own factories are not functioning at 100% since the revolution?
Let me say something in this matter. We have to realize that time is an important factor in our life. And unfortunately, we are not considering it as important as it should be. And we are neglecting a lot of things. First, factories have to run in full capacity to enable them to be an economic organization, irrespective of it is public sector or private sector. We have to run the factories in a professional ways. This needs to, to educate the people which they are running the whole show. What is professional approach to everything? This is an issue which I believe we are missing it too much. And if I'm taking, the factories which is not running in full or so on and so on, the reasons behind this is the organization behind, and we need to sort out the demands which we needed and the object of, why this factory has been existing, and it was running once upon a time in a, it was a good factory. What happened, And then, if we don't mend it very quickly, it accumulates the problems, and our economy suffers from it. And we are underestimating the, to run the show in an economic way. Number of people has to be seen about it, that the minimum of, of people run this to enable the factory to make money. All of these points, it has to be, that's what we call it, professional approach to the problems which we have. I believe, I hope that once, we are putting our hand, like going to the doctor and he's just telling you what you got, and if you don't get treated, then it will aggravate, and you will die eventually, and we don't want to reach that point.
Yes, definitely. Well, Dr. Kharrat, how would you evaluate now the Parliament in its third session? How would you evaluate the communication, the coordination between both the Parliament and the government so far?
Well, the thing is still unclear, because we are not very sure that this government is the government of the Parliament. The Constitution says that the Parliament should nominate the government, the cabinet. This is not happening. So we don't have a coalition of political parties supporting the government. And therefore, you are not sure who is the opposition and who is with the government. You are not sure. This is a very fluid parliament. So, is the WAF the ruling party, or is it the future of Egypt, Mustaqbal Watan, or the future of the country? Who is ruling? Who is the ruling party, and who is in opposition? Is the Free Egyptian Party opposition, or is it part of the governmental coalition? Because at many times they vote for the governmental decisions, other times they vote against it. They have this is a sort of a fluid, vague parliament up till now. And this doesn't help communication and doesn't help the political effectiveness of this parliament and all aspects of its effectiveness. It is almost taken for granted that the parliament will vote for any suggestion or decision the government proposes. This is taken for granted. But what are the political mechanisms? It baffles any political analyst. What are the, is the government, is this parliament able to change any minister? Is it able to provide us with other ministers? Who will provide this? It is still going to come from the president, while the Constitution gives the Parliament a power to nominate, and then the President interacts, but you have a very vague situation here. So this doesn't help communication at all. And I have to say that I think we lack seasoned politicians in this Parliament. We don't have enough politicians. I haven't seen many politicians, except from the slim opposition part. You have some seasoned politicians there. Again, most of them are not coming from a long political background or political expertise. So most parliamentarians now, and the voice and the speaker and the speaking voices of this parliament, you find them lacking political tact. I think that this is a parliament that lacks political expertise more than any other parliament. If you don't have this kind of expertise, you are not able to convince the public enough.
Yes.
So this is another problem. So you have the problem of vagueness, and you have the problem of lack of political expertise, and many times lack of even political identity. Most of, yes, the Free Egyptians party has an identity, but again, most of its members are not really from the Free Egyptian party. They came from, from the marketplace of parliamentarian members. So they come from everywhere, really. Again, the WAFD is in a fluidity thing. The new parties that have good memberships numbers in the parliament did not show us their colors. We are not sure what are their colors up till now. Apart from supporting Mr. Sisi, we don't have any color. So this is a very important obstacle against communication. If you don't have an identity that is clear even to you, how can you communicate a political message?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, definitely the Parliament holding its third session now. A lot of people will be focusing and looking at what it can achieve, and hopefully we'll still be able to sustain the economic growth as mentioned by the IMF report and the Global Competitiveness report. This concludes the economic section of tonight's episode, and before we start heading to the political part, let me thank our very distinguished guest engineer Samir Riad, member of the Egyptian Industrial Federation. Engineer Riad, thank you very much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, now also the Egyptian delegation attended the Hamas-Fatah talks in Gaza today, talking about reconciliation between both Palestinian parties. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Egyptian delegates attended in Gaza Hamas-Fatah talks, which are considered a fresh attempt at reconciliation between Gaza's Hamas rulers and Palestinian National Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas Fatah. Rami Hamdallah, the head of the PA Ramallah-based government, made his first visit to Gaza since 2015, aiming to crown a rapprochement between the rivals after a decade and outbreaks of violence. Hamas head Ismail Haniyeh called Abbas to discuss preparations for the visit. Hamdallah's visit was made possible after Hamas announced it is willing to hold talks with Fatah and dismantle the Gaza Administrative Committee, which served as a local independence governing authority. The initiative is backed by Egypt, which is closely following the talks. The Egyptian delegation included Egypt's ambassador to Israel, Hazem Khairat, and two other high-ranking Egyptian intelligence officers. Haniyeh and Hamas Gaza chief Yahya Sinwar met the delegation on its arrival. The Hamas-led Interior Ministry also said it released 5 security detainees on Sunday as a gesture towards reconciliation. On Tuesday, Hamdallah headed the PA's weekly cabinet meeting in the enclave after the visit. Delegations headed to Cairo to continue reconciliation discussions. Haniyeh said the inner Palestinian reconciliation process could be long due to setbacks along the way and the fact that there were many issues that require brave decisions. But they had started tearing down the wall of separation, adding that the sides were in a situation of national, regional and international changes, in addition to the strong Egyptian backing which supports the end of the rift. The Hamas leader pledged that dialogue with Egyptian officials would continue to effectively implement all the agreements, build a national joint government and prepare for elections, parliament and the presidency. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has stipulated 3 conditions for reconciliation: that Hamas dismantle its military wing, that there be no foreign involvement in the administration of the Gaza Strip, and that any money for restoration and development only be channeled through the Palestinian government.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now focusing on the reconciliation talks between Fatah and Hamas. We're now joined over the phone by Dr. Abdullah Hamouda, member of the Royal Institute for Strategic Studies from London. Dr. Hamouda, can you hear us?
Yes.
Dr. Hamouda, first of all, how would you view this step taken in the Palestinian-Israeli peace talks now? These talks, this file has been open for decades now. This is considered and seen as a big step, the reconciliation and the unification between the both Palestinian factions. How significant is it this time around?
I do believe this is probably one of the very best major steps in the right direction. I think we should concentrate very much on that and take it as a very priority step, support it and try to get the full result out of it.
Mm-hmm. And how does the international community view it? Is it just another episode of the whole Palestinian-Israeli negotiations and peace process that will sooner or later fail as we used to? Or is this something serious, something that could be very significant?
No, I do believe the international community is trying to accept it as a real different step, supported by a very close atmosphere around it, a very critical country just next to these two parties. So, and actually this country, which I mean Egypt, was the main and first factor to play in this direction since the very beginning. No, as a summary, yes, the international community accepts this step very seriously and waiting for real positive results.
Dr. Abdullah Hamoud, a member of the Royal Institute for Strategic Studies from London, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Kharat, how optimistic should we be about this step, the reunification between Fatah and Hamas? Are we being too optimistic, or should we keep our feet on the ground?
Well, actually, we are entitled to some sort of guarded optimism, at least, because it seems that, you know, Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood. This is, we have to recognize. And but there are 2 or 3 models of Muslim Brotherhoods. There is the Tunisian model, and the Turkish model, and the former position of the Egyptian model and the Sudanese model. So radical models and more moderate models that can maybe at one time, we hope that they are integrated into a civil modern state sort of democracy. So Hamas is by nature radical. It was one of the more radical factions of the Muslim Brotherhood. But the pressure that has been put on it from the Arab community, from the Arab League, and from its own people. It cannot run the Gaza Strip forever on this narrow-minded and autocratic regimes, isolationist attitude, depending upon Qatar forever. So Qatar has been cut off now. Iran has been cut off from its support from Hamas. Hamas has not shot a single bullet against Israel, which is its raison d'etre, for what, 7 years, 8 years now. So we are not they are not justified in continuing to present themselves as the radical, purist, Islamic fundamentalists, this sort of thing. So they will start to maybe consider changing their DNA. If this happens, then we are open to real optimism. If it doesn't happen, then what Mr. Abu Mazen is talking about, Mahmoud Abbas, is talking about are very pragmatic and measurable steps. No funds from outside. Every support should come from the government. No arms beside the Palestinian Authority. These are very pragmatic. I'm talking about the DNA. What is the DNA? The DNA is respecting human rights for all, notwithstanding religion, race, gender, whatever, respecting the rules and the principles of democracy, not only the procedures of democracy, because they have been voted into power, yes, but after that they dismantled all the democratic principles and democratic institutions, actually, and ruled in a way that no other election can happen. The third one is to denounce all kind of violence and hatred and terrorism, and denounce sectarian, and to clarify the relationship, number 4, to clarify the relationship between religion and political action. There is, well, yeah, people say complete separation between religion and church, or religion, church and government, or religion and state. This is not true. It has never been true anywhere in the world. But you have to regulate this. What do you mean by the Sharia as the main principle of legislation? What do you mean by that? So this is not clarified yet. So some of the Muslim Brotherhood tradition are very radical. Others are at least entertaining a discourse that are modern. So these issues are very important. The hatred discourse should be changed. So this has been not tackled at all. The DNA of a terrorist organization has not been dismantled. Only the practical, measurable outside steps.
Yes. Well, Dr. Kharrat, a lot of countries have tried to mediate within this file, and Egypt has been arguably the most influential or the most successful in actually reunifying both Palestinian factions. How did Egypt succeed where other countries failed? And now, after 10 years, since 2007, what moved Hamas to change or really take that turn towards reconciliation?
I say Egypt has the big advantage of the vicinity. We are the bigger neighbor. They are only between Israel and us. And Jordan is not far, but it's still separated from them by Israeli territories. So we are the number 2. We have the advantage of history. The PLO has been born in Egyptian soil. It has been born in the bosom of the Nasser's regime. So we are very well connected with them. Number 3, after the fall of the Muslim Brotherhood regime in 2013, there has been some tough times between Egypt's regime and state and Hamas. However, Hamas had their back to the wall. What they can do? I mean, they cannot be too friendly with Israel, and they don't have any other option. Their only way out was Qatar and other, I wouldn't say regimes, but at least influential millionaires from the Gulf that were helping them. Now this was taken away with the boycott of Hamas and the economic besiege of Qatar, I mean, with the boycott of Qatar. Qatar is now trying to deal with its own problem. So it is not playing their mama anymore. So all this pushed the Egyptian card to the front.
Yes. Well, there was an Egyptian delegation attending the talks today in the Gaza Strip that included the Egyptian ambassador to Israel, Hazem Khairat, also 2 other high-ranking Egyptian intelligence officers. Now, how would you see the other side responding to this reconciliation between Hamas and Fatah? How do you see Israel responding to this? Are they going to embark positively on peace negotiations? Are we going for the 2-state solution and the boundaries set by that solution?
This is another important factor in the strength of the Egyptian card, is that the Egyptian diplomacy is a very well seasoned diplomacy. We have real diplomats who have knowledge and ability and communication. Number 2, this diplomacy has been able and successful to maintain good diplomatic relationships with our traditional quote-unquote enemy, Israel, and have been, despite of the cold peace on the popular level, have been able to continue the formal relationships between the two regimes, or between Israel and the Egyptian state. Having said this, this means that there is a communication bridge between Hamas and Israel, which is the Egyptian diplomacy and the Egyptian intelligence and the security connections. This provides another platform for communication. Now, I think Israel is benefited a lot from the presence of Hamas. The presence of Hamas gave Israel the excuse, whom are we talking with? We need one unified front in order to talk with. And as soon as the PLO starts talking with Hamas and unification starts to emerge, they say you cannot unify with a terrorist organization. You see? So this is catch 21.
22.
Yeah, 22 or something. Yeah. This is even worse than 22. So what would you? What do you want the Palestinian Authority to do? If they get in one front with Hamas, they are getting in one front with a terrorist organization. If they leave Hamas and split, the Israelis would say we cannot talk to you because there is another ruling and player on the ground. This benefited Israel for a long time, maybe 20 years now. They have been playing with this card. Now, the main issue at stake here is whether the international community will deal with this peace accord or this national unity accord between the two rivaling parties in the Palestinian scene. If the international community is able to integrate this peace accord or this national reconciliation and say to Israel, now you have to talk to this party which is unified, we will achieve progress on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict scene. If they don't, then number one, this peace accord will fall apart. Number two, the progress in the Arab-Israeli conflict will still be hindered again.
Yes. Well, do you feel now that, so now we're waiting also for the verdict of the international community?
Yes,
will they actually pressure, will they be able to influence Israel to get back on the negotiation tables? Will they be effective in influencing Israel? Will the UN as an international body be influential enough? Because they've been criticized of not really taking concrete, hard steps or actions specifically towards this file. And even if Israel now doesn't have that excuse of negotiating with terrorists, what will they do?
I think the international, when I say the international community, I'm not talking, of course, only the UN, but I'm also talking the USA, I'm talking the European Union, I'm talking the NATO, I'm talking even the Arab League, I'm talking all these bodies. How are they going to stomach Hamas? Hamas is still classified as a terrorist organization. So how are we handling this? I mean, the international community and even the Egyptian justice system has said that Hamas is a terrorist organization. How are we handling this? How are we going to change Hamas' position or negotiate with Hamas? So, I mean, the first step now is not to engage Israel, but to engage Hamas itself and engage the Palestinian Authority itself. How are you going to forge, phrase, rephrase or reshape or reframe Hamas? Or even transform Hamas if we are too ambitious.
Well, Hamas has taken a very important step. We're running out of time, but do you feel that Hamas will respond positively to that?
I think this can be a promising step. If it can be a step saying we are ready for transformation. If this happens, then both the international community will be able to move on, and Israel itself will be able to move on.
Yes, definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is definitely a step in the right direction, and we should be optimistic, or rather, as Dr. Kharat mentioned, we should be have guarded optimism regarding these steps, and hopefully it will move forward. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest, Dr. Ihab Al-Kharrat, the Vice Chairman of the Egyptian Social Democratic Party. Dr. Kharrat, always a pleasure having you with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.